So it's any media house's dream headline, Peter versus Peter. Central Manchester Member of Parliament, Mr. Peter Bunton, has thrown his hat in the ring to challenge Dr. Peter Phillips for the leadership of the People's National Party. Mr. Bunton is with us now. Morning, sir. Welcome to
Good morning,
Jamaica.
Mr. Bunting.
Morning.
I think when we start, we must say Peter versus Peter, and everybody goes like this. That was such an interest. You saw that picture? That was good. Good morning.
And you have made some utterances already, obviously, but tell us why you want to be the leader of the People's National Party.
Well, the challenge is really coming out of my analysis of the state of the party at this time. You will recall when we lost the 2016 election, Julian Robinson had chaired an appraisal committee, and they had come out with some findings of the reasons why we lost that election. After East Portland, I went back and I took out that report, and all the issues that contributed to our loss in 2016, again, were the same set of issues contributing to our loss in East Portland. And I said, this really doesn't make sense. And that has been reinforced by all the polls, which show us being uncompetitive at this time. The party, truthfully, needs to be reshaped, repurposed for the current paradigm. We're still operating a party that, is perhaps behind where the GLP is today. I think they've been evolving faster than we have in terms of the communication, in terms of the organization, and we need to catch up. So really, my offer of myself, my intention to offer myself for president at the annual conference is really a response to the situation that we find ourselves in. It's nothing personal. I mean, I have a great deal of respect for Dr. Phillips. I consider him a friend. In fact, my sister tells me we both have roots in the hills of Belfield. My paternal grandmother in Davidton, his grandfather in Blue Mountain. So we may even be distant cousins. But there really is no personal hostility or animus. It's a response to the situation at the time. And I think not just for the party's sake, but for the country's sake, we have to always have a competitive two-party system.
Some of your colleagues have come out in support of you, obviously, but some have come out in support of Dr. Phillips. And one of the things that the support for Dr. Phillips, what they have said, is the timing is not right. Your response to that?
I think it was Martin Luther King said that it's never the wrong time to do the right thing. And I think my offer at this time is the right thing for the party. And, in terms of an election being imminent, we're only little over 3 years into a 5-year term. The government is not under pressure. They have a lot of projects that I'm sure they want to see complete. The chaos on the roads, the issues with water, etc. I think I was a general secretary for 6 years, so I have a sense of what would be good timing. And, while anything can happen, because our Constitution allows the Prime Minister to call an election at any time, I don't see that being on the cards this year.
Right now.
When I do my assessment, you're talking next year, probably from sometime the middle of next year going forward.
I have to ask you, MP, Central Manchester, first thing, how are your constituents doing? And how have you been doing as Member of Parliament?
Well, this is my third term. Every term, whether the PNP wins or loses, I've increased my margin. Immediately after the last general election, we did a poll of the constituency. And I think it showed a very high rating, a satisfaction rating with the MP. I think there were some very tangible things I had delivered during the last term. 2,000 new high school spaces. We got a Sutherland Global on Ward Avenue employing about 2,000 young people. A second facility has opened. I was integral to all those developments and making representation for them. So are you taking some of that
over into what you're offering in your campaign? Meaning, I want to know, what skill sets are you bringing? When you talk about renewing the party, what are you going to bring that's going to make it better than what Dr. Phillips is doing now? What are you bringing to the table?
Well, I think my experience in the private sector gives me an advantage in terms of strategic planning, in terms of decisiveness, in terms of understanding the organizational structure that you need to deliver the strategy that you develop. I'm fortunate, perhaps among not that many politicians, have the corporate experience that I have. Starting up companies, turning around companies. When I came into the PNP as General Secretary in 2008, it was a similar turnaround situation. We had come out of 2 losses, a general election and a local government election. The party was in dire financial straits. We had deep divisions over the presidential contests, the one before and the one that was coming up that year. So I had to craft a strategic plan that identified what our weaknesses were and where we could
I want to pick up on that strategic plan, because obviously I'm assuming you've been planning this, we know, and you're a strategy man. So in planning, I'm sure that you have brought in other members of the party who you already knew, and I see you're coming out day after day, and I see every day there's a new person standing behind Peter Bunting. I want to know, how many people do you have lined up already behind you? And for the general public, understanding governance and politics, who votes for the new president of the PNP when at the general election coming? So I want to know what your strategy was, how many people are behind you in the party, and who's voting for you, because I'm sure you have a plan, and you know numbers.
Well, I'm an engineer by training, so I do have a facility with numbers, but you also have an intuition. If you've been around politics long enough, you have an intuition. You pick up on the ground, you check that by doing polls to confirm your intuitive sense of the direction. And that was more what I relied on, rather than going, constituency by constituency, how many groups, how many delegates, etc. You kind of feel a groundswell for change, a rising tide in the party and in the country, quite frankly, that demanded a response. And that is the call that I was answering.
So who's behind you? Right
Well,
now,
a number of persons have come out already.
Yes.
Mark Golding, Dayton Campbell, Ian Hales, my colleague Michael Stewart, a few more are to come, and I'm not going to preempt them.
Come on, drop somebody's name, though. Come on, give us a scoop. Give me one more.
But what I can tell you is that I'm encouraged and surprised in many cases by some of the persons who are coming forward and saying, good decision. We're with you. We're backing you 100%. Okay. And I'm not just talking amongst my colleagues or even party delegates. People from the wider society, from business, from the creative industries, etc. And it's actually quite exciting.
Yeah. Mr. Bunting, when you threw your hat in the ring, for want of a better phrase, Dr. Phillips came out and said it's good for the party, it's democratic, and we kind of need that, and I accept that. But I've always found it strange. There must be some kind of rift, which is my word, because you're going against the leader, and some folks are backing the leader. Does this not cause problems internally?
It can, and truthfully, it has in the past. And one of the motivations for us choosing our slogan for the campaign, Rise United, has been because we realize this is something that we have to address frontally. It was identified as an issue in 2016. It was an issue, quite frankly, back in 2007 when we lost the election. We've sort of become fractured and divided, too many factions. And that is something that we have to confront day one after the annual conference. And it's not, you don't resolve it by sweeping it under the carpet or papering it over. You have to address it frontally. No, there are people more expert than I in terms of these interventions for team building, for trust building. I don't know if there needs to be some kind of truth and reconciliation, but I've already in discussions with persons who are expert in that regard to say, that this is how we're going to do. And quite frankly, we're not waiting for that. The tone of the campaign is going to start that process. And I'm very clear to everyone who supports me.
Just an extension.
That, there must be no sort of toxicity in the campaign.
Just an extension to that question before Empress, because, and say you win, and me never, Bell, I'm a member of parliament, I didn't vote for you, but I might be the best person for a position. Is that easy for you to say, all right, you've never voted for me, but him is the best man for putting agriculture or finance or whatever. Can that be easy for you?
You know, everybody, depending on what is said, people might feel a bit aggrieved. But let me just use the example. When I first ran in Southeast Clarendon in 1992, when I went into that constituency, I was just 29 years old when I was elected the caretaker candidate for Southeast Clarendon. 2 councillors were in the constituency, and both declared flatly they would never support me, and they were totally opposed to my candidacy. Well, 3 years later, one was my campaign manager, the other was a very strong supporter, and the second one, in fact, ended up succeeding me as MP in the next term. So I think part of leadership is being able to pull together, different personalities, but most importantly, unity is not something that people unite around just for unity. You need to communicate a transcendent purpose that allows us to overcome our petty differences, our petty personal differences, and say we can all pull together for that purpose, which is bigger than us individually, bigger than the party, and in the national interest.
Well, when we talk about purpose, we talk about leadership, you speak about the tone at the top, general election now, running for president. Anybody else throwing their hat in the ring, or is it just Peter against Peter? Will it be Peter against Crawford, against Paul Well, I'm not sure, but do you know of anybody else who will be throwing their hat in the ring?
I'm not aware of it,
Okay.
but I welcome anybody who feels called to lead as a service rather than, just for personal status. I welcome them.
Neville, I told you could run
ideas.
against him. Neville's been wanting to run against you. I'm putting it out there.
I'll check on your membership.
I have to ask you some things. This is going to real quick, in 60 seconds, just kind of answer short
Lightning
answers.
round.
Yeah, you ready? Yeah, you ready? Round 1, Peter Bunting. Question number 1. Is Dr. Phillips a good leader? Rate him out of 5.
I think Dr. Phillips has made a great contribution. He has been in the forefront of politics for the last 30 years, since 1989, and he has excelled in many areas. For whatever reason, and I don't want to get into anything personal, for whatever reason, I don't think he's seen as the man for this time.
All right, you definitely are a politician. You need therapy, as you said. He was saying earlier, there was an article saying anybody wants to be a politician needs therapy. No, I believe that politics is important. It governs every organization. There has to be leadership. However, do you think your leader now of the country, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, do you think he's a good leader?
I think he has skills and competencies, no doubt about it. I think he also has some very strong weaknesses. I think we've seen in some of the constitutional issues where he has lost in court on a whole series of them. I think, for example, this current issue with Ruel Reid being investigated, and a government entity has hired a lawyer to obstruct the financial investigation.
Obstruct the word, or to
You can say whatever you want,
yeah,
but if they are preventing the financial investigation division from getting information about an alleged criminal investigation, that to me is not leadership. That is a policy direction. You can say, CMU, you're a government agency. Cooperate fully with whatever the FID needs.
Final question, sir.
Final. I needed to know No, we need 10 minutes. I want to know the values and what is the PNP under your leadership going to be saying to Jamaica, and what plans you have. And your question will be, so it's that 1 A and B.
Well,
let me answer. Let him answer that one.
B.
You will have to wait on our formal launch to get the platform. One of the, in this first phase, we've made a case of why a challenge is necessary and a change is necessary. Over the next few weeks, we're going to be having a series of discussions with various stakeholder groups, not just party members, but unions, small business. We're going to tell them what our ideas are. more importantly, we're going to listen to them and use that to fine-tune our platform, which will be launched in a formal setting in July.
Final question. What happens if you lose?
I'm still the Member of Parliament for Central Manchester, and I take that as a privilege. And I promised the constituents when I came there in the beginning a minimum of 4 terms. I've gone 3, so you have to contend with me for a little while.
Good luck, sir.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming.
All the best. And good morning, Dr. Phillips. All the best. It's going to be a fair match in the ring. I wish you both the best.
Member of Parliament for Central Manchester, Mr. Peter Bunting.
All right. And why fathers need to bond with their children, I don't know. Why do they need to bond? You're a daddy. You're a daddy.
After the
Somebody
break.
tell us after the break.